a goodwill beginner. All my good works are needles in hay, and I try to do right based on my own sight, just like a blind man who's standing in the way. And all that I've taken, it was sadly mistaken to bleed for my own, for my sake. Now everything I have was stolen or borrowed. All that I've taken is much more than I can take. I was a fool in the quickness of the sand, and I was a leper trying to save my own skin. But now I'm a man who knows where I stand on the rock of ages. That's where I stand. Lord, you bore my refuse. You are my refuge. You gave up everything when you threw it all away. You gave me life new. You carried my weight through the evening to the morning and to the day. I was a fool in the quickness of the sand. I was a leper trying to save my own skin. But now I'm a man who knows where I stand on the rock of ages. Jesus, that's where I stand. On the rock of ages, Jesus, that's where I stand.
Greenville, that's right. You know, it's always important because if my understanding is right, there's 26 Greenvilles in the United States, so we have to say specifically Greenville, Texas. And so if you look on YouTube to try to find this, it's Calvary Chapel, Greenville, Texas. What? Are you developing some kind of, ticky thing? Anyways, hey, you know what? Tonight we're going through the book of Job, but before we do that, let's talk about things that are going on. Women's ministry, Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Normally I get a recap or a distilled down version of it, but last night I think we're both just tired. I think we're both just like, I was super tired when I got home, so I was kind of out of it. Anyways, I'm sure it went well. That's Wednesday or Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. We're going through the book of Job. Next week will be the first Wednesday, so that's the June 3rd, and that's when Don will be doing his thing for the first Wednesday. So there we go, and then that'll be, like I say, June 3rd, and that's the communion's also the same night. I'm still tired. That's okay, I'm working all night. Do what? It's July 3rd. Don't you guys know anything? I mean, come on. If you show up on June 3rd, that's going to be awkward. It's really awkward. Anyways, I'm going to be here July 3rd. Now, I don't know about you guys, weirdos. Anyways, so that's that coming up. Men's prayer Friday mornings at 6 a.m. Wow, that's early. Whew. But you know what? Oscar says that's the time of day I want to be here. All right, men's breakfast. That'll be coming up this Saturday. Wow, that snuck up on me a day late. Some of these, I have been spoken to over this one. They said, isn't men's breakfast on the 4th Saturday of the month? That's the 5th Saturday of the month. I'm like, well, like I own a calendar. Come on, people. Anyways, we're shooting for I don't know if July 27th is the 4th Saturday or not, or August 24th, but I have to keep track better than I do now, because I've been like saying that, and then it turns out there was something else happened on the 4th Saturday, and it worked out really well for everyone, that we just moved it for some reason. And so anyways, you know what? Do what? July 27th is going to be a good one, and August 24th? August 24th looks pretty new in the month still. 29 is pretty deep into the month. So it happens. You know what? We're going to be happy this Saturday morning. Those who are, not you, those who, hey, Tony, you going to come eat breakfast with us on Saturday morning? He says, I'll be there, probably, maybe. Anyways, so there's that. Otherwise, we are, the fellowship meal, that's coming up not this Sunday, but the following Sunday. That will be on July 7th, not June. Again, Patricia, if you're trying to get here on June, you're just wrong. July 7th, and that fellowship meal theme will be grilling. And so we'll figure that out. If you want to have meat cooked, I don't know if I'm going to bring my grill or not. I may just grill ahead of time, and then, because we did that and it worked out really, really well. And it's harder to get in the parking lot with when I consume half the parking lot with the trailer and the grill and all that stuff. So anyways, we may just kind of wing that one differently. Sunday mornings, we're still going through 2 Peter. We'll be down there so this past Sunday was version or installment 1 of false teachers in chapter 2, and we still have 2 more Sundays of that to go. I actually had good conversations this week about that, and man, I think it's going to be even cooler when we get there. So with that said, why don't we look at the book of Job? Well, might as well turn my Bible to the book of Job. Craziest thought ever. In the book of Job, you'll know that things went horribly bad for our good buddy Job. Job has not been having a good day. Job is not having a good old time. Job is in a bad place because why? Because Satan was like, I'm looking for somebody to mess with. I'm looking for somebody to take down. And God says, have you considered my servant Job? And if I'm Job, I'm pretty annoyed by this, right? Like, why? Why would you do this to me? But you know what? It's going to work out. Now, something interesting about Job is, to this point, he has not done anything against God. What you're going to find out about Job is he continues to not do anything against God. But there is something. It's not that he's lacking in faith. He has faith. He's got some issues, and he's kind of working through this stuff. And so, yeah, you have that going for you. But Job is going to be okay. What was it that Satan was trying to get to happen? He said to God, if you do this to him, or if you allow me to do this to him, he will curse you to your face. The interesting side of this is, to this point, and actually to the end of the book, we'll find out, Job will not curse God to his face. Well, his wife will offer that kind of stuff up. And of course, other people will try to maybe suggest things along those lines, but not Job. And so, we've learned that Job is a real man. He's a real person. He's going through real issues, real stuff. He's not some make-believe character that you find in a book. A lot of people like to assign that kind of thinking to Job, but the reality is what? Job was a real man who really walked the earth and really had some horrible friends and who gave him horrible advice. And he had a wife who was absolutely devastated by the destruction and all the things that happened. He had a wife that was just completely done. For Job, it was a tough time. And not kind of a tough time. It was an incredibly difficult time. So Job is kind of processing this. Now, we talked about this last week, and we kind of looked at it deeply. And we're going to do it again this week, except there's 3 basic phases of what's going to happen here at with Job. And he's just absolutely devastated about being alive. Now, last week we talked about being so frustrated, so angry, so hurt, so confused, so all this just avalanche of emotions that are primarily negative. And they're all flooding down on you at the same time. And it's like, how do I function, man? What do I say? What do I do? And you just the words can't come out right. The thoughts that come out, man, they're sporadic and they don't really connect and make sense. Other than to say they're all coming from that same backdrop or theme that's going on, which is that everything's gone to hell. And now what? And Job's just at a loss for words. This week, as we look through chapter 3, he's not so much at a loss for words, but now he's kind of ramping up why me, Lord? I mean, and what was it? It was Chris Christopherson who wrote that song, right? Why me, Lord? And so you might think that he's just speaking for Job in that sense, and maybe he was. I mean, I don't know why he wrote the song. I never looked that one up, but as curious as I am about music, you'd think I would have, but no. I will now, though, if you think about it, because I do that stuff. But Job is going to be, he's kind of working through his emotions. For 7 days, his friends came and they just sat there with him. They sat with him for 7 days and they didn't say a word. Well, that's going to end. We know that. But for 7 days, they just sat with him in comfort. And, I mean, you couldn't get anyone to do that these days. 7 minutes? I don't think so, Tim. 7 hours? No way, Jose. 7 days? Are you out of your mind? But his friends did it. I think their intention, their heart was absolutely perfect. And then again, we'll find out, not next week, but the week following, that if it weren't for bad advice, he'd have got no advice at all. And they're going to just really start stepping out. Now, what they do is all in response to what we're looking at tonight. And tonight, the whole thing of it is, man, I just wish it wasn't. And if you could just consolidate it into one thing, it's, I just wish it wasn't. There's a whole lot of things that Job is destroyed over. So, moving on now, we're going to look at, about to look at verse 1, but before we do, I want to put you back on the timeline. So 7 days, his friends have been sitting there with him, just kind of hanging out, going, yikes, dude, without saying one word. Zip. You know what I'm saying? They're shut their mouths and they're just sitting there with him. So after those 7 days, this is what we're at now. In fact, verse 1 of chapter 3 starts like this. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. Wow. Just to start right there, Job is just like, rah, rah. Did Job curse God? No. But I want to tell you something right now. Indirectly, he kind of is. Indirectly, he will. You think about it, and it's like, you don't hear this anymore these days because everybody's so holy and wonderful. But there's those times when, why was I even born? Why was I in this place? And because things are bad and they're horrible, and it's like, wow, this hurts. And if you think about it, when you do that, you're kind of going against the God who created you. The sad part of life for me is that God created me and gave me this personality. Sometimes it works really well, and other times, not so well. But you know what? God gave me this personality to use in His glory for His purposes and His way. That's what I got. And sometimes when my personality seems like it backfires on me, like, why do I do that? Why do I do stupid things? And like, that question will never be answered. However, I'm questioning what God did. Now, with my personality, I can make the wrong decisions, but the reality of it is that God didn't make mistakes when He made me, when He made you, when He made anybody. He made zero mistakes. Isn't that sad? Like, but couldn't He have just made a mistake and then have a reason for this? No. And let me tell you this, you've never been through anything to the level that Job has been through. Job has gone through just the absolute pits of hell, and he's at the other side, or he's not really at the other side of it yet, but he's kind of down there dragging low and going, I can't believe this. And so he begins with, after this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. Whew. Well, that's the framework of what we're going to see now. And so let's read from verse 2 to verse 10. It's going to make sense, I promise you. And Job said, that's all of verse 2. And Job said, let the day perish on which I was born, and the night that said a man is conceived. Let that day be darkness. May God not seek it, nor light shine upon it. Let gloom and deep darkness claim it. Let clouds dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. That night, let the thick darkness seize it. Let it not rejoice among the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. Behold, let that night be barren. Let no joyful cry enter it. Let those who curse it, who curse the day, who are ready to rouse up Leviathan, let the stars of the dawn be dark. Let it hope for light, but have none, nor see the eyelids of the morning, because it did not shut the doors of my mother's womb, nor hide my trouble from my eyes. Is this dude messed up or what? I would like to think that my speech after 7 days of silence, after going through all this stuff, scraping out my boils with a piece of pottery, just having the time of my life, I would like to think I'd be more positive than this. But I'm pretty impressed with Job, to be perfectly honest. He's bummed, man. If I just hadn't been born. Now, what's interesting about this is this whole thing is poetic. I mean, all of chapter 3 is really almost poetry in the way that it's laid out. It's emotional. It's just connecting to people in a deep way. Sorry, I'm humored by something. Which is a sad time to be that way because we're in Job. But look at kind of how he starts this. And look at verse 3. It says, "A man, let the day perish on which I was born, and let that night said a man is conceived." He's talking about, I don't even want to be conceived at this point. He's taking it back. All these arguments people have about abortion, when does life start? Job says it went back to conception. If I hadn't been conceived, none of this would have happened, There's some great arguments on that. Great, but this is yet another one. I'm sorry. But he's taking it way back to the very back on the onset of it, just if that hadn't even happened, now we're talking. Now there's a place to start. When like there's no Job, there's no record Job, there's no Mrs. Job, because Mrs. Job would have married some other mister, right? And so the way he sees it is just let's go back to the very, very, very beginning. But notice something interesting about this. He doesn't come against God. He comes against his own birth. Now, this is the one thing, and I wrestled with this as I got all the way through chapter 3, and what we're reading here sounds like somebody who is suicidal. Let's just be clear and crisp about what it is. I can't believe I've just never been born. And the similarities are really creepy, but never once did he talk that way. Like he was like planning on doing himself in. Never even talked that way. Never even became a consideration to him. In fact, that was not even something that was on the table in his thought pattern to do. He just knew this was a horrible day. He had never been born. Just that was his place where he was. Now, let me throw this idea out there, and you guys can kind of stir on it while we finish this chapter. But where does that come from? Do what? No. It could. We can go in that direction, but we're going to get there in just a minute. Don't worry. Depression, but it's self. Now, I know there's chemical depression, all that stuff like that, but I'm talking just regular, normal, run-of-the-mill, everyday depression. It hits us. It hits every one of us. I mean, it just does. What's the end to depression? Well, that's what we want it to be. But like if you were to take something to its extreme, let me get political for just a moment. Can I get political? Is that okay? So this is your left, right? So if you have the centermost, this is the independent, I can vote either way kind of a guy, and they're like just like whatever. That's more or less, I don't know, I guess we could say like what we would hope people would be like free thinking, just constitutionalist kind of a mindset. I'm right here. Once you get to once you go left, you start going, Democrat and further. But the furthest that you can go left takes you to communism. I mean, if you're just going to take its end to its end. And on the far, do what? Well, it's once you take it to its extreme, that's where you take it to. And that is complete control by some other entity, whatever like that, right? Because they have all the smarts and all that stuff. But now on the right goes even weirder dangerous because it's like, well, I want my freedom, I want this, I want that. And then when you get to the far extreme, far right, to the furthest point you can possibly go right, you end up at anarchy. Like, wait a second, anarchy? Yes, anarchy. I don't have time to go through the whole process of that. But everything has its extreme, right? And so I say that because I start voting Democrat, and then eventually I make my way down there if I just keep the path. Or I start voting right, and if I just keep that path and keep trying to drive, I end up in one ditch or the other. It's just where it's going to end up. That's why I'm very big about, like, I'm conservative, but, I try to be balanced because you take something too far, and I can promise you it goes there. When we get to the end of depression, when we start moving to the end of depression, where does that end us up? Suicide, exactly. And that's exactly the kind of mindset that Job is in. I just wish I hadn't been born. He just didn't consider doing something about it, which was good. And I think that's a great lesson for us to pick up on because as things go bad, and we see things that are going bad, it's a selfish endeavor, a selfish desire to ease the pain. Because the language that he's talking is, I'm in pain, things are bad, if I could just end the pain. And his idea to end the pain was to have never been born. But today it's very different. They say if the only way to get out of this pain, it's a selfish. And I hate to say this, and I've been on investigations where this was the case. I've had the criminal investigations guy explain this to me in such a detailed way, and I don't care what people say, this is absolutely what makes sense. You become so selfish, so absolutely, I care only about me, and understandable in the situation to a certain level, that you're willing to make yourself feel better by doing the one thing you think, and that's erasing yourself. and what my good CID buddy called it, Larry, we called him CID Larry, or Secret Squirrel Larry, but this is another story. But he said it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. He told me that when we were on our way to an autopsy for a guy that hung himself. And I started, that, I mean, this is like, that was I never really considered it so much for myself in that sense, but seeing that and going, okay, this is a really big deal. So in all the things that's going on with Job, he is done. I mean, he's had it. I can't do this. And you know what? You and I will never understand the level that Job went to. Maybe we've been through some bad stuff, and we've kind of gotten in the direction that Job has. I can tell you that none of us have been at the level that Job is. But you know what? When you're in that situation, you don't care what Job went through, because that's Job. That's some dude in the Bible. This is me. This is happening to. I'm frustrated. I'm concerned. I'm crying. I can't believe it. And you go through every ounce of emotion that you possibly have. And the far end of that is just like, I got to do something for myself. I'm going to say this politically incorrect thing, but we're on the internet, right? To unalive yourself, because you got to say this. Is that how you're supposed to do the language now? To unalive yourself is a incredibly selfish thing to do. I mean, beyond selfish. Where's the gear of self go to? Pride. Because pride's about me. Job was in that place. Not suicidal, obviously. I mean, he was, today's day, he would have been like, I'm just going to swallow a fistful of pills or do whatever it is I'm going to do, right? I mean, that's kind of where he was. But he had the good sense, and he loved Jesus. And of course, he didn't really know Jesus the same way we do, but he loved God. And he said, if I could just not be born. The problem is that's offensive to God. Every one of us that's in this building, I'm talking about the people in the other suites too, the clinic, the people down there, the dog place, all that. Everybody who is physically in this building, everybody's within 10-mile radius of this building. Everybody on the face of this earth was created by God. What a bummer, right? You mean that weird person out in the middle of nowhere, never even heard or seen of anybody else in his life, was made by God. And you can't tell me that God made a mistake. This doesn't work for me. God didn't make a mistake with you, didn't make a mistake with me. He made Oscar the way he made Oscar, and Oscar, you may be like, man, why do you do this to me? But you know what? God made you that way for a reason. Serve him inside of that. That's what it is. But Job's not going through those problems. He's going through, I've just lost everything. I lost my family. I lost my stuff. I lost everything. And I'm scratching these stupid sores. I can't believe it. Hey, could you get one of those? Curse God and die. Come on, I'm just itchy, man. So, I mean, he's in a bad place. But you listen to the depth and the darkness of where he is. Let that day be darkness. May God above not seek it, nor light shine on it. Let gloom and deep darkness claim it. Man, just erase this thing off the face of the earth. And then we get down, you're like, man, this guy's just going absolutely wacky on this. Behold, let that night be barren, let no joyful cry enter it. Man. And he throws some weird thing in verse 8. I've had some, of course you all know my attachment to this name. Leviathan, as described in Job chapter 41, which is about 3 chapters into God correcting Job, he basically describes this just powerful creature, this dragon. And as described in the Bible, he's a fire-breathing dragon. We'll get to that when we get to Job chapter 41. It's really fascinating, some cool stuff. And you see when God's answering Job out of the whirlwind, starting at chapter 38, you see there that he's kind of dealing with the things that Job has said. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to make a practice. We're going to highlight all these things, and we're going to be able to go back and bounce them out and see how God was correcting all those things. But in verse 8, he says, let those who curse it, whose curse the day, or let those who curse it, who curse the day, who are ready to rouse up Leviathan. You say, Leviathan. Now, whenever I met with Ron, he said, you named your company Leviathan? I'm like, yeah, it's a fire-breathing dragon. It's a fire company, man. It makes sense. And it does. I wasn't trying to be hyper-religious or hyper-political or nothing like that. It just made sense and it worked. Now, with that, when Ron said, oh, that's the spirit of Leviathan, that's Satan. Okay, fair enough. As it's demonstrated here, one of the commentaries drove back that point and said, Leviathan, as it's talking about the serpent, the dragon, the this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, you know what, dude, that makes sense. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying how interesting that thought would be there. I'm not going to go change the name of my company, don't worry. It's still going to be a big dragon rolling down. Well, if that van will ever roll down the road again, it's going to do it soon, don't worry. I got to get to the shop. It's got the wrench. When the wrench comes on, you got to stop it. You can't, the wrench says, don't drive me. Anyways, I'm sorry, I get sidetracked. I apologize. But as you see the Leviathan thing here, we're ready to rouse up Leviathan. And that speaks to like it, as maybe Job sees it, more of a satanic kind of a mindset or a demon kind of a thing. He sees Leviathan as evil. Now, in defense of, the Leviathan for the sea monster, Leviathan is the one that scares all the sea merchants and so on like that. And, of course, it's described in chapter 41. You're like, man, this is a powerful creature. Ain't nobody going to mess with this. And God even says, can you mess with the Leviathan? Can you do this? Can you do that? We're going to get there in chapter 41. I don't want to go over it now. But think about the context of this situation. Satan's done all these things to Job. Job knows this, and not yet exactly. He'll understand it. But Satan's done all these things, and so basically he's like calling out, like, you guys got Satan involved in this thing, so to speak, in an illustrative way, because you have to remember this is all poetic. As he's putting it out there, it's in a real bizarre sense poetry. It's just a rough poetry. And he says, basically you're getting this involved, and then God's like, you can't mess with Leviathan. You can't do that stuff. And so here's one of those places where we want to take a special note and say that when Job is looking at it, he's like, this is a bad deal, man. So in the light of that, we'd have to say that colors Leviathan in a dark light. And of course, we can see it throughout the Old Testament. He's mentioned multiple times, or we say he. Leviathan could just be a breed of dragon. We're not given enough detail to really know all that stuff. Did you know there's dragons in the Bible? Did you know there's fire-breathing dragons in the Bible? Did you know there's talking donkeys in the Bible? Anyways, everybody likes the talking donkey story. Anyways, let's get back to this. Let the stars of its dawn be dark. Let it hope for light and have none, nor see the eyelids of the morning, because it did not shut the doors of my mother's womb, nor hide trouble from my eyes. Just, God, could I have never been born? Do you think he's sad? Do you think he's upset? Do you think he's frustrated? Do you think he's got like at the peak of emotion that's just crushing him? 100%. And so, absolutely, it makes sense. Now, as he goes on, he's gonna get a little bit weirder. Now he's gonna kind of change it into the things that he sees and the things that's going on. So look with me at verse 11. He says, "Why did I not die at birth?" Now he's okay, no longer about not being born, but why did I just die at birth or come out of the womb and expire? Why wasn't I a stillborn baby? He's really frustrated, right? Verse 12, "Why did the knees receive me, or why the breast that I should nurse? For then I would have lain down and been quiet, I would have slept. Then I would have been at rest with the kings and counselors of the earth who rebuilt ruins for themselves, or the princes who had gold, who filled their houses with silver. Or why was I not as a hidden stillborn child, as infants who never see the light?" And he's like, whoa. Why couldn't it have stopped there? Now, let me tell you something interesting that he just said there. Okay, basically, if I couldn't have been born, then I could have been born stillborn to death. I've never experienced this personally, but there's something that happens to a young lady who has a baby born inside of her, and it doesn't make it to term. It's called a miscarriage. And I know people who've had those, and they basically just short of having a funeral for the baby. Why is that? Because it's devastating to mom. Why is that? Because that's her little baby, right? I mean, that's her little baby. He's so selfish, so focused on his grief. Of course, he's not really thinking about what he's saying, okay? Let's just be straight. He's not being rude or mean or whatever like that. It's just kind of the situation he's in. Why couldn't I have just been dead at birth? No lady, she had a baby, and I don't know how long the baby lived, if it was like minutes or hours after being born, or maybe it died, or it was stillborn. I can't remember now this exactly when. Huh? Who? They had a funeral for this baby. Nobody ever met the baby, you know what I'm saying? Except mama. That child is buried in a graveyard. Why? Because that was a person. That was a human being. That was her oldest child as a daughter. You know what I'm talking about. And they celebrated the life and mourned the death of that child. See, when we get in those places, we become selfish, and we don't think about the people that we hurt or we leave behind. I don't mean this to be a PSA against suicide, but let's just think about this for a minute. I have a good, do what, PSA? Public service announcement. Yes, I'm going back to the after school of rock stuff. It's a PSA. That one, public service. So, I know a man, and he's a good friend. I need to go see him soon. But his wife, kind of in a similar place to Job, not quite exactly where he was, but just like, I can't do this anymore. And she took her own life. She unalived herself by the internet standards, right? And that destroyed him, destroyed his kid, destroyed his other kid. It's like, I can't believe what happened, this, that, and the other. She didn't think about what she let the destruction, the wave of chaos and all that was behind that. When her son, later on in life, got to the point where he just didn't think there's no way out, he said, well, you know what mom did? You don't think you have an effect on people, but you have an effect on people. He said, you know what mom did? So he copied and he followed mama's footsteps. Now there's a man who has lost his son, lost his wife. And he's moved on, but when he talks about it, it just tears him up inside. I should invite him to lunch on Friday, shouldn't I? It's a tough deal. I should invite you. Want to go to Irving? Let's go. If I invite you to lunch, there's only one place we're going, just so you know. It's a great place to eat. You can't eat there. You wouldn't like no point in going there. But that right there, that devastation, that stuff that happened, it had a residual effect. And so when you see Job talking about this, he's being selfish, self-focused, all that stuff. Somebody hurt my feelings. Nobody cares. Somebody made me mad. Suck it up, buttercup. You know what I'm saying? We have to contend with the things that happen in our life. God's going to allow things to happen in your life that are going to be tough. They're going to be hard. They're going to be stuff that just like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. But when we stay focused on God, and Job does this to a certain level, but it's, you know what? Let's just say this, because I want to, just to continue my PSA for a moment longer, shall I? Unaliving ourselves is a horrible idea, the ripple effect, the selfish side of it and all that stuff. But is it a sin to be sad? No, it's not. Is it a sin to be frustrated? No, it's not. Is it a sin to be so down in the dumps, depressed, can't believe how can anybody go through this ever in their life? How can I make it one more day? Is that a sin? In the context, it's really not. It's just trying to work through your emotions. Job has a ton of them to work through right now. And so, man, he's beat to pieces and he's done. But I told you this, and I'll tell you again, he doesn't curse God in any of this time. He does get some bad theology, though. So let's make it a practice not to listen to people and get theology when they're in their worst place, when they're really struggling. Because he basically says, if I would have been, if I had been stillborn, then I would have been at rest. And I would have been at rest with the kings and counselors of the earth who rebuilt ruins for themselves, or with princes of gold. Wait, he's operating in this mindset that, everybody who dies goes to a better place. That's kind of the way it teaches. How many funerals have you been to? And I don't want to make you feel bad about somebody that that died without Jesus, but let's think about this for just a minute. How many funerals have you been to where they said, "Oh, our buddy is looking down from heaven and watching over us"? Ain't happening. They're in a better place. You hope so. You can't guarantee that. All dogs go to heaven. That's a stupid movie, right? Do you guys know about that movie? Okay, good. I lose my references as I get older. You know what I'm saying? The people get younger. Why am I getting older? They're just getting younger, right? But what happens? Not everybody goes to heaven. Narrow is the way that leads to heaven. Broad is the way that leads to destruction. And so I've been at so many funerals, and they're like, they're in such a better place. They're looking down and smiling at us. And all I want to do is go, "You're wrong, man." It doesn't work like that. If you're a sinner, an unrepentant sinner that does not belong to Jesus, and you die in your sins, you're not going to heaven. Sorry. That's not me causing judgment. That's me telling you what the Bible tells me. That's it. If you are somebody who belongs to Jesus, you love Jesus, you're serving Jesus, all that stuff, and you die, you know what? You're going to be in heaven. You're going to have a good old time. I'm looking forward to some of the people who've gone on before me that I get to see in heaven again. That's just what it is. But for those people who didn't have Jesus, and I have plenty of those in my life too, you and I were experiencing something back in the 80s with this weird fountain of light. You're right back to that place. A weird, creepy, mystic ceremony for our grandmother. Oh, she was in a cult. And they talked about, she's in a better place. And at the time I was like, oh, okay. Because I was like a kid, what do I know? I'm stupid. I'm just bigger stupid now. But I don't know nothing then. Is she in a better place? I wouldn't think she is. And I'm not trying to be judgmental, but she had no serving of Jesus. She served some weird fiber optic fountain thing. To what? Colors. Well, we were supposed to dress in vibrant colors that day, and I was like, and of course, my mom was like, nope. We're going to dress sad, because there's a little kid holding mama's hand walking, right? I don't know what I'm doing. But he's basically talking like that. Everybody gets to go to heaven, and that's not what's going on. He has no understanding of what's going on. He's just frustrated. See, he's in that selfish place that says, if I could just relieve this pain, I would be in pleasure and happiness. Death ends the physical pain, but it doesn't end the spiritual pain. Spiritual pain is ended by the salvation through through Jesus, the receiving of the Holy Spirit, all that. That's right there where that goes away. But he's kind of missed this a little bit. And he says, he's talking about like how he could be there and as infants who never see the light. The wicked cease from troubling, and they're weary or at rest. Wait a second, verse 17. Look at that one more time with me. There the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary are at rest. I throw a question mark on that one because it doesn't make sense. There the prisoners are at ease together. They hear not the voice of the taskmaster. Thank you. The small and the great are there, and the slave is free from his master. Now, some of that could be true. But let me throw this idea out at you. If you don't belong to Jesus, if you're not a heaven guided missile, so to speak. I'm going to put that on the bumper sticker. You watch me. If you're not a heaven-guided missile, that's good. I'm just that right there on the spot. Just came up with. I'm smart. If you're not that person, if you're not, aim for heaven, and you die, that's a bad deal, dude. Because I would rather be under a taskmaster who's kind of a brutal person, but I get those moments of rest when he's sleeping. I can sleep now. Everything's going well. I would rather be in that situation than an eternal conscious torment. Just seems like a better option. That's all. So again, don't trust the theology of Job at this point. He's frustrated. He's lost. He's just bummed. Does Job still love God? 100%. Is Job still going to trust in God? Yes. But you have to allow him to go through these emotions. He has to work this out mentally. You have to relieve the pressure. One of the things I've been taught, and it's hard for me to do because I like to talk too much, but one of the things that really helps people is when they tell you what's going on. Just, they verbally vomit on you about all the things that have gone wrong, right? But what's that do? It takes the pressure off of them. If you love people, you'll hold the bucket as they verbally vomit. You'll do exactly what you're supposed to do. And when you do that, when you get those thoughts and the things off your head, it causes you to calm down to a certain level, right? Takes that pressure off. Am I right? 100%. Job has to go through this process. Don't be upset by this process. It's part of the thing. Now, he's frustrated. He's going to say things that are incorrect, but it's part of the thing where we need to be able to get that out. Have to do this. Moving on now to verse 20. It says, "Why is light given to him who is in misery, and life to the bitter in soul, who long for death, but it comes not, and dig for it more than for hidden treasures, who rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they find the grave? Why is the light given to man whose way is hidden, whom God has hedged in? For my sighing comes instead of my bread, and my groanings are poured out like water. For the thing that I fear comes upon me, and when I dread befalls me, what I dread befalls me, I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I have no rest, but trouble comes." He's jealous of people that are in a different place. Now, chapter 3 sounds pretty messed up, doesn't it? Sad. What a bummer. We're going to end tonight on such a bummer bit of a thing. But when we understand what's going on there, it's not so bad. This is a struggle for me. It's probably a struggle for y'all. But sometimes people will either call me up or, "Hey, John," and we'll talk, whatever like that. And they start telling me all the things that are bad. And here's something that we're going to, and this is a learning lesson for me, guys. I'll be honest with you. Job's friends we're going to help him. You don't want help from these guys. You just don't, right? And so many times I've tried to help people with a good heart, with a good intent. These guys had a good intent. They're idiots, but they had a good intent. How does the saying go? You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Shut up and listen. Yeah, that goes for many, many things, right? When you find somebody who's in a place like Job is here, now you're not going to find somebody who's in the exact place as Job, and the reason that you're not is because he's in a very different situation. But life crushes people differently. Life crushes us electronically now, and all the weird things, and there's a conspiracy theory for everything at this point in life. You can't go 5 directions without being, something's happening. When those people come to you, and they're going to come to you, and when they're just absolutely in tears, "I just can't do this anymore, I'm frustrated, I'm this, that, and the other," let them release. Love them, and let them release. Were you singing? Do what? I was like, I'm hearing stuff. I hear stuff a lot. Now, not auditory hallucinations, but like sometimes there's things going on in other areas and I hear it. But anyways, so I was like, But when somebody needs to release, you got to sit there and let them release. And you know what's funny is like there's that somebody in your life that you can just to. And just like maybe it's whoever it is, but when you realize who that person is, who you and you just dump on them, and they sit there and they hug you and say, "Man, I love you. We'll get through this." You have to understand the level of love from that person. Is it a parent, a spouse, or whoever it is, a friend, all that stuff. Whoever that person is who can just sit there and listen and say, "You know what, I still love you." It's the roughest, toughest thing. Those people, I'm telling you right now, hug them because they're the best in the world for you. Now, it may not be that for everybody else. It may just be your person, and everybody has their person or their group of persons or whatever it is. But when that happens, you just know it, and you're like, "Thank you." And let me say this. If you're that someone's person, right? If you're that person that they can just jump on you and blah, 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 blah. And by the time you're done listening to you, you're like, "Man, now I'm depressed," And you love them, and you hug them, and you say, "Man, I'm here for you, whatever." Just remember that part of it too. We've got to be that for other people. Job's friends are not those people. Job's friends are going to give him the worst advice alive. And we're going to see that in a couple of weeks. They give the absolute worst advice. They know how to fix it. Let me tell you something, guys. We don't know how to fix it. We have no idea how to fix it. Whatever the it is, we don't know how to fix it. Guys are notorious fixers. Am I a good fixer? No, but I try all the time, right? All the time. Guys are notorious fixers. And you know what? Women are fixers too. Just not as heavy-handed about it. Just how it is. So when we see this person, this Job person who is just at their absolute end and they can't function and they can't do it, you hug them and say, "I love you." I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be the hardest thing for you to do because you're going to want to tell them, "Well, let's go kill that dude." You know what I'm saying? That's a country song right there. Like, this devastating thing happened to me. Let's go kill him, And so we got to avoid the country music thinking in that sense. It's like a good friend will, pick you up from the police station, but a better friend will help you hide the body, that kind of mindset. The best friend. You've never heard that? It is a funny statement, but the reality is the best friend that you can find will hug you. Say, "I love you. This sucks. This is the worst thing. I can't believe this. I'm here for you," whatever it is. Job doesn't have those friends. He has a different set of friends. 2 weeks from now, we're going to begin meeting his friends. The first one we're going to meet is Eliphaz. And I know people are panicked about, "Hey, look, you're going so slow." But this next time that we meet about this, let me tell you how long it goes. It's going to be chapter 4 through chapter 7. So we're going to be bouncing through them like that. You'll be like, "Oh, wait a second, that's moving too fast." I promise you, it's just what it is. So you'll be happy. You'll be like, "Oh, man, this is fantastic." But you're going to learn so much from the book of Job. You're going to learn so much about ourselves, so much about dealing with people, so much about loving people. And let me say this. Hopefully it brings into us an agape love. And that's a love that's not predicated on what they've done for me. There's no tradesies. No, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. And agape love knows no prerequisites, knows no things like that. Agape love is just simply love. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you this evening. We do. We're thankful for the example of Job. We're just really at a weird place about seeing how all these things come together. Lord, give us the compassion and the wisdom that when we're dealing with somebody who's gone through all these things, Lord, that we would just be there for them, be that sounding board, be that person to whom they can speak, that they can just lay everything out and get it out. Lord, if we are those people for somebody, help us to do it well. And for those people who are those for us, Lord, thank you for those people. They make so much, they're so important in our lives. And Lord, if we don't have those people, help us to find them. And give us the strength to make it through. Even the toughest day, Lord, we see that Job still kept you in high regard. But Lord, he was frustrated. Help us, Lord, to be more like Job, that even in the bad times, we don't come against you, that we still give you praise, but we are sad, confused, depressed, and all those things stacked on top of each other. But Lord, that we never lose focus of who you are. Lord, we need your strength to get through this time. We need your strength to get through this world. What a crazy, crazy world we're in. So Lord, help us, walk us through this time. Help us to be proper people for you, to love you. Lord, help us to be those people. Lord, we do thank you. We love you and praise you and ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.